Welcome to the Read Your Keys podcast. I am your host, Joel Lopez. If you're enjoying the content, please like, squish, smash, pulverize those buttons, those follow and like ones. We're on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Today I have my guest, Reeves Writer, buddy of mine. You can find him on Twitter at Reeves Writer. You can also find him on YouTube at PoeticSheepdog. He is a modern dad, traditional wisdom, coaching your family. Reeves, welcome to the show, brother.
What's up, man? What's going on?
So Reeves and I, we actually met on a retreat with the homie Tyler Tote.
Yeah.
And Reeves, like I was blown away by you, man, because like your knowledge of like Twitter threads and like podcasts, like you always have one, like just like, oh yeah, there's a Twitter thread on this, like this guy's there was a podcast on this, and you could get into the, it's just like, man, this dude remembers everything. So I was like, I'm gonna talk to this guy. This guy remembers everything. Welcome to the show today, brother.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate having you on, man. The retreat was great, dude. I'm so thankful for Ty put that on there. It was a divine thing to have us all show up on that retreat together, man.
Yeah, it was really cool how, like, I'd never met you in person, but it was just like, man, everybody just got along, and we were able to just kind of talk about whatever. It was dudes, trying to help each other be better husbands, better men, better fathers. It was all like that. We're all just kind of, giving each other, our perspective on things and how we do things, and that was, one of the big catalysts for me wanting to have you on, because, you had this book on family culture, and you kind of had talked about that, and I was like, man, like Reeves has like a great, like I'm a structure guy. Like, I'm not the guy to build the structure, but like if I see a structure, it's like, wow, that's really fantastic. Like coming from my sports background, like, people who knew how to put things in place. Like I always really admired that, and I felt like that's kind of what you had kind of explained and kind of I read through in your book, and it was like, wow, man, this is really cool. So what was and this is really what I really want to talk about. Like, what was the catalyst for you even to start seeing some of these things that kind of produced the book for you?
Dude, that's a really good question. It actually goes all the way back, maybe about 3 years ago. I read an article that was by Albert Mueller, who is the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary president. He wrote an article called "A Christian Vision of Beauty." And I was just like, I don't know how I found it. I stumbled upon it looking for articles on something, and I was like, a Christian vision of beauty. What the heck? What the heck is this? And it was a 3-part article, and it like rattled me, dude. It struck me to the soul. I think I read it maybe like 5 times, because I read it the first time and I was like, I don't fully understand what's going on here. And then I read it again, and I gained a little more knowledge, and I read it again, and I was like, holy cow, this is unbelievable. So probably the initial spark to even get towards this book was learning about what the definition of beauty is. So once you learn about the definition of beauty, it changes and affects everything that you do. So that was kind of like probably the catalyst that led to beautiful family culture.
And then, but before then, I mean, family mattered to you, obviously, right? You were already married and had kids.
Yeah.
But so what was it in this article, blog that you had read that was just kind of like, oh, because I've read some things like that where it's just like, oh, like I need to step up here, because this isn't good enough. Or it's like, okay, that was good for my family when I was growing up because they did the best that they could, but I want to push my family even further so my kids can go further, that whole thing. So what were some of the things that you read in there? Like, because I always think, like, a guy like you or me, it's like, we care about our families and we want to do good by them, right? Like that's that was never like, it was never like, oh, like I'm gonna neglect. Like I always wanted to be a husband, and I wanted to be a good one, and I always wanted to be a father, and I always wanted to be a good one.
Mm-hmm.
right? So like I
Mm-hmm.
always
Mm-hmm.
had that, but if I look back, like 5 years ago, I probably wasn't as good as I am now because I've surrounded myself with people like yourself, and the connections that you made. It's like, oh, okay, these are the ways that I can step it up. So, what
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
did you see some things in yourself in your that you were in your family that you were like, oh, this is I'd like us to be better than this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay, so basically, if we go back to just like a summary of what the definition of beauty is, the summary of the definition of beauty is it's goodness, truth, and reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anything that's going to be beautiful, it has to be good, it has to be true, and it has to be real. Or to say it in the negative, if it's not good, it's not beautiful, it's not true, it's not beautiful, it's not real, it's not beautiful. And those those are ultimately find their completion in God Himself.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what I realized was if I'm not living a beautiful life, then I'm not reflecting God in the way that I should be. You know. So if I'm doing anything with my family that isn't beautiful, then I'm not reflecting God in that way. And what that made me do is be more intentional, right? Because you have to think about your life in order to live in an intentional way. So the book came from a thread that I wrote, and that thread just came from a wellspring of like, okay, I have to take my life seriously. I want to reflect beauty, which would be to reflect God to the world. So I can't do that living unintentionally. And then I over a period of time stumbled on the importance of having family values and defining what your values are and having a family mission and defining what that mission is. And it's like those things enable you to live with more intention and to be more truthful and to act in a good way. So I think those things kind of were like an overflow of an intent of trying to live intentionally, and that intentionality came from trying to reflect God in how I live.
That's really just one of those things where it seems like a small thing, but really it just kind of it kind of charts the course for you, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
and you going through your mind and thinking about these things, are you having discussions with your wife of like, hey, this is the way that we need to go? We're well, let me take a step back because beauty, you had defined beauty, but as men, like we don't I never really thought about beauty. Like I could
Mm-hmm.
see things as beautiful. Like I see my wife, she's beautiful. I see my daughters dressed up beautiful. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
to to think that I'm gonna cultivate that in my family, because I'm not an artsy guy, right? Like I'm not like, I always think of like beautiful art or beautiful music, and I always kind of
Mm-hmm.
wanted them to
Mm-hmm.
have
Mm-hmm.
those kind of things around, but it was never an intentional thing. And I think that's why I like talking to you, Reese, is because one of the actually the first times I had seen the word beauty somewhere, we were taking my friend had a church and it was meeting in a school, and they had like a mural, and it was painted, and on it said happy. It said the mission statement of the school was seeking truth, goodness, and beauty. And I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
whoa, what
Yes.
is
Yes.
that? Like
Yes.
I've never heard that, because I've worked in public schools. I'm a public school kid, and it's usually like education is focused around, hey, you're gonna be college ready and career
Yep.
ready, or
Yep.
get jobs, or get some kind of lame thing like that. But seeking truth, goodness, and beauty was like, oh wow, that kind of stirred something in my heart. Like, what is this? And like,
Yeah.
that to me
Mm-hmm.
is what learning was. But it was also like, well, this I'd like that for my kids, right? Like, I'm not gonna set the course for you because God has set that for you, but I want you to kind of have the roadmap for that. So,
Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't
Mm-hmm.
think beauty is something that men really talk about, and so I think
Mm-hmm.
that's why I think that's why you're so fascinating, brother, is because you're talking about these things, and it's very intense, but it's also like it feels like a deep well from you, because it's like you've really been just meditating on this stuff and thinking about this stuff, and it's just like, oh, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I like, I know this is just as much for me just to kind of like learn, so I can take my own notes and stuff and re-listen to it, because the that having those family values, like, so what were the conversations with you and your wife? Like, you read this article, you're blown away, like, because
Mm-hmm.
that's how kind of how
Mm-hmm.
it goes with me, right? Like, I have this thing running through my head. It's like, okay, now I'm gonna talk to my wife about it so we can kind of, have it back and
Mm-hmm.
forth.
Mm-hmm.
How did that go for you?
Okay, so let's go. Can I go back to
Go ahead.
something you said?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that one of the reasons that men typically shy away from beauty is because they don't understand it. Modern culture. If you read my very first chapter on beauty, modern culture equates like prettiness and like cuteness and like aesthetics with beauty. Like prettiness and aesthetics, like that's what people see as beauty. Like you look at a woman and you go, oh, yeah, she's beautiful or she's not.
Mm-hmm.
But really, what most people mean when they say she's beautiful is they mean that she's aesthetically pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they mean. Or they see a picture of something or whatever because they don't fully understand what that means. But if you understand what beauty means, you might actually look at a woman and go, you know what? She's aesthetically pleasing, but she's not very beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's kind of why I think men have shied away from beauty is because they don't understand it. They just think what it's pretty or it's cute or it's aesthetically pleasing. So I think when you understand that beauty has a much more depth to it, then
Mm-hmm.
you can go, okay, I can get behind what beauty is because it's connected to strength, it's connected to structure, it's connected to values, it's connected to what typically what people would think are masculine things. So um,
Yeah, one of the things that I remember reading too, I could be wrong on this, but I think in like the Hebrew tradition, beauty was character, and
mhm, mhm,
then it switched to the Greek, which was the outside was beauty. So there was a paradigm shift. So that just kind of to follow along because I had that thought in my head. That might be
mhm,
part of it too. Like just like what you're saying, right? A woman could be physically beautiful but not a good person but still be beautiful. It's like, well, no, she's not beautiful because
mhm.
she's not a good person. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
go ahead.
Hmm. Yeah, technically she would be just aesthetically pleasing or pretty or pretty, but she would fall short of what what true beauty means.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that could be possible. I mean, like Augustine was one of the big ones who first, and I mean that was like 354, I think, is when he was born. Like 300 A.D. Is when he was like you know, processing these things. And don't get me wrong, I'm not like some philosophical genius. There's a lot of debate on even the definition of beauty, but this is the one that I believe is accurate. So there are some people that include aesthetics in beauty, so on and so forth. But I don't necessarily see that, especially because God is spirit, and if God is spirit, that means He's not going to be aesthetically pleasing because he's spirit. He has no body, right? So if you say aesthetics is part of beauty, then you exclude God from that definition because you're not. I mean, he is the most beautiful, but he's spirit. You can't see him, right? So to me, that's why I would say you can't exclude aesthetics in there because you exclude God.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to talk about the progression from reading the article to eventually getting to like family values and stuff like that, it actually was like further. It was more than a year later that we eventually established family values because it just didn't happen right away. Like my mind was blown by the idea of beauty and the concepts of living more intentionally, and I started just like intentionally doing it. And I had my wife read the article, but I don't know, like as things work, she wasn't like as shocked by it as I
Uh-huh.
was. Like I read the article a couple times and then I gave it to her and she was like, "Oh yeah, this is nice." And I'm like, "It's not nice. It's amazing. What are you talking about? This is mind-blowing." And she's like, "Oh yeah, it's cool. I'm glad you like it." And so it wasn't later until we really took like getting the family structure in order that we decided like, hey, we should write down what family values are, because my wife and I met at a Christian organization, and that organization, they were all about values. If you work for like any corporation, they
Mm-hmm.
have value statements and mission
Right.
statements. Um, But what really got me onto it was Dale Carnegie's Seven Habits of Highly Effective Families.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yeah, I read some of that one. Okay.
so he actually has his original book is Seven Habits of Highly Effective People,
People. Right.
and that one is the one that's most known. And he got like written a whole bunch. Like people wrote to him, "Hey, you need to do a book on family. You need to do a book on family." And I think I was in the bookstore and I saw it and I opened it and it was like $2.50, and I was like, "I'm taking
Dang,
this
that's a
thing home."
steal.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think it was like a Bookman's. You know, they have the Bookman's around here.
Oh, is that
So
like a
I took
college
it
bookstore or
home.
something?
No, it's just a massive used
Oh,
bookstore
oh,
chain.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So I took it home. I just took it home when I was reading through it, and I was like, "Oh man, this kind of like provides a structure and a framework to living an intentional life." You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
I had read Seven Habits of Highly Effective People before, but I never really. I guess I didn't really take it to heart as much as I did when it was like, "Hey, this is about your family."
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I started talking to my wife about like, hey, we really need to have some definitive family values. We need to really have a definitive family mission statement so that we can help guide and lead our own family. And that wasn't until later. And then like once I started making the connection between like living intentionally and family values and family mission statement, and that allowing you to be real, right? Like if you say that truth is goodness, or if you say beauty is goodness, truth, and real, so then you want to like really live out your family values, like whatever
Mm-hmm.
those values are. In order to be beautiful, you need to live them out in reality. So the only way you can do that is by defining them clearly. I mean, people live by their values on accident,
Mm-hmm.
but to be intentional about it, you have to write it down. So that's when I talked to my wife about, okay, we got to come up with these family values and come up with a mission statement. Yeah. Um,
How much writing did it take for you to kind of sort through your own thoughts? Because I mean, you seem like kind of like me, like you have a thousand thoughts a second that just kind of like are running through, and it's just like trying to channel that into like okay, like a simple like or a easy to work with framework for your
mm-hmm,
family. Like,
mm-hmm,
did that take a
mm-hmm,
while? Because I actually
mm-hmm.
understand what you're saying too. Of like, hey, I read this article, and it wasn't until a year later where I started kind of like let that it's like a little seed. Or I guess a big seed, but
Yep.
kind of like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to water it and grow until I find like what, like now it's time for me to kind of push forward. How was that for you being
Yeah.
able to
Yeah.
kind of like get to those core values for you and your family or your mission
Yeah.
statement?
Sure. 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 Well, you know what? Honestly, the mission statement came first, and it actually came because I wrote a mission statement for myself. And I wrote a mission statement for myself because I hated my job.
Mm-hmm.
I hated my job, and my wife, she was like, "Hey, you can't just hate your job every single day. Like you need a way to realize that you're living to glorify God, and you need to be doing that in the work that you do." And I was like, "Oh man, that's a really true slap in the face
Mm-hmm.
that I need to take to heart." And I was like, "Okay, well, how can I do this? Like, how can I understand that I'm glorifying God by the work that I do?" And I was like, well, if I write out a mission statement, I can say, all right, every single day I'm showing up to work and I'm going to glorify God in these ways. So I wrote out. It took me, oh gosh, man, I think maybe 2 months to write out a mission statement because I was working a full time job and I had my family. And what I ended up doing is I ended up getting a whole bunch of mission statements and printing them out, like from businesses and
Mm-hmm.
personal mission statements. And um, this was prior to reading the book. Okay, this is prior to reading the Seven Habits of Highly Effective Families.
Mm-hmm.
So I printed off all these mission statements, and then I would wake up 15 minutes early, and I would spend 15 minutes reading them, and then writing out a rough draft of a mission statement, and
Mm-hmm.
then reading mission statements and writing them out, reading mission statements and writing them out, and then so basically after 2 months, I whittled it down to the mission statement that I have, and that I basically have used most of that, adopted it for my family because I think it's just so excellent. So I ended up writing this family mission statement, my own personal mission statement, which, I mean, just I don't know any other way to describe it than like it changed the way that I looked at my life every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Because and I didn't at the time I didn't realize like, okay, now I'm living in a beautiful way. It wasn't later until I read the book where I connected the values and the mission statement all together to go, oh man, this is what it means to live this beautiful life. So that mission statement, it literally enabled me to, even though I hated my job and I didn't want to be there, it enabled me to like stick it out and not complain because I knew I was fulfilling my mission every single day when I woke up. So that is kind of what changed. Like even though I hate the work, like part of my mission statement is to serve others, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can say to myself, did I serve others today? Yes, I did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then I'm fulfilling my mission. Part
Mm-hmm.
of my mission is to make things better. So, did I make things better today? I hate my job. I was doing pest control at the time. I hate doing pest control. But when I showed up at this person's house to do their pest control, did I serve them? Yes. Did I make
Mm-hmm.
things better? Yes. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
then what I did today was successful because I'm fulfilling my mission.
Wow, that's powerful.
And I I still didn't like my job, but oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh, it made every day I could wake up and go, okay, I'm going to serve these people and I'm going to make them better.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like literally, that got me through my job until the point where I just, ended up quitting because
Yeah.
even though I'm serving them and making things better, I'm not going to stay forever. But
Yeah.
that was when I came up with the mission statement, and that was the catalyst to later when I found the book and read it to connect the values and the mission statement together. Yeah.
How long was it from when you wrote the mission statement to when you found the book and were able to connect the values? Because I think that's so funny.
Oh man, I don't know. It must have been maybe 6 months or 8 months or something like that.
I
Nothing
think
is ever quick, dude.
Yeah, I think it's so funny though. It's just like you're searching for this thing, and then like I think you do like the step one piece of it, and then it's just like you're in a random bookstore, um, you know, I
Hmm.
mean it's a popular book, but that you would find that book, as you're kind of cruising around, that they would have that. I always think that's a God thing to me. It's like, hey, like those things don't happen
Yeah, yeah,
by
yeah.
accident.
Well,
Um,
if I hadn't have read Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, then I wouldn't even have known to I wouldn't even have known to pull Seven Habits of Highly Effective Families off the
Right.
shelf.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
it's a frame of reference for you too, right?
yeah,
And
yep.
I think for guys like us, it's like, yeah, that's a thing. But I actually was thinking that you, it's funny that you said that, was that, yeah, like all these companies, they have their mission statements, organizations, they all have mission statements, and then families for the most part, it's just, hey, let's get married, let's have kids, and then it's very very unintentional. Yeah, I think that's
Yes,
that's probably
yes.
it's very unintentional. Whereas like for instance, like I coached football, and for me it was very intentional. Like, when you come here, this is what we're gonna be about. This is how we're
Mm-hmm.
going to be,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I think I do that with my kids, and my wife and I, we do that, but it was never like written out, like, hey, this is who we are, this is what we do, these are our guiding, like, we go to church and those are our guiding principles, but it's not like a very very clear, if I come to a fork in a road, what am I going to use? Like, yeah, like, I'm gonna lean on God, but like, if I can help my kids with even more of a framework, because it is there, right? It's just, you just have to be very intentional about, like, just like you, man, like, that's impressive to wake up 15 minutes and then write out for however long. Like, nobody
Two
wants to do
months.
that.
It was two
No,
months. Yeah.
nobody wants to do
Yeah.
that. That
Yeah.
sucks.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
that. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
nobody wants to do that. And to think, because I don't like writing, man. I don't like doing that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so to write it out, like, you're kind of chipping away at the marble or the clay, like a sculptor. It's just kind of like, what's my mission statement? But the
Yeah.
satisfaction, because I think it's really cool what you did, man. Because a lot of guys, men, work jobs they don't like, um, but to be able to get out of that, the mission statement, and to be able to, like, hey, I'm doing a thing I don't like, but to kind of have that strength or fulfillment that comes like, hey, it might not look like the way I want to look right now, but I won the day today. Like you gave
Hmm.
yourself the
That's
ability
it.
to
Yes.
win the day.
That's right. That's right. Yep. And you know what you're saying is so it's so spot on. It's one of the reasons that I intentionally made my mission statement broader because I wanted it to encompass every aspect of my life. Like I can show up anywhere and do this. Like if part of my mission statement, and don't get me wrong, if someone has this as part of their mission statement, they can. But if part of your mission statement is, hey, I'm gonna do pest control to the best of my ability, okay, great. I mean, that might be your mission statement, but how does that connect to your family, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know if my mission is to serve people, I know if I serve my kids and I serve my wife, I'm successful, right?
Mm-hmm.
If my and it doesn't matter what if I show up at church and I serve people and I make things better, I'm successful. If I
Mm-hmm.
go to the grocery store and I serve the people who are there and I make things better, I'm successful. So it doesn't matter. I could go on vacation and be in a hotel, but if I'm serving the clerk behind the counter and I'm making the place a better place, then I'm successful. So I
Mm-hmm.
wanted it to be broad. I didn't want it to
Mm-hmm.
be so narrow because I wanted to be able to like I can fulfill this at any place that I go.
Yeah, exactly. It's the environment doesn't matter. I carry this
Yes.
with me into every
Yes.
single environment that I go,
Yep.
and I think
Correct.
that's I think that's really the big difference too, right? Like because you could have made this the statement to be the best pest control person
Yep.
ever, right?
Correct. Correct.
But
Yep.
then what about when you're at home? It's like it's very limited. So
Yep.
you made it broad, but it's actually very specific, narrow. Because now
Correct.
now you're in another place. But it's like no, I'm still the 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 mission is the same, but the assignment has changed, right?
That's
Like
correct. Yep.
so your
Yep.
assignment
And
changed. Go ahead.
yeah, and what you're saying too, if more men could grasp onto this, we would live in a different world. I
Mm-hmm.
promise you, we would live in a different world because it was the main thing that was like the catalyst to allow me to spring out of bed in the morning and go, I hate this job, but I'm going to go here and fulfill my mission. And and even when I got home from work, the times that I was like, man, I don't really want to serve my wife today.
Mm-hmm.
I've just been serving everybody else. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
you know
There's something
what?
left in the tank.
This is part of who I'm called. This is part of my mission here on earth and what I'm called to do. And I'm going to do it, even though it's difficult and even though it's hard. So, and for me, it like really put it was like gas on the fire
Mm-hmm.
for living with intentionality. And I think that if more people could do that, our society would be completely different because you're thinking out ahead of time. These are the values I have. This is what I'm here on earth to do, and I'm going to fulfill that. And less people would work for companies that have values that don't align with them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And a
Yeah.
mission, and they wouldn't go to a place where they couldn't fulfill their mission. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the whole family structure. I mean, even the way that I parent my kids is different by having a mission statement and values. All of those are changed because of it.
Yeah. I think you speak for a lot of 9 to 5 dads. There was a Jordan Peterson was talking to somebody, and it was like I'm at the point where time flies. Like I'm at that
Mm-hmm.
point where it's like, man, I
Mm-hmm.
can't believe it's been this long. But Jordan Peterson was talking about it. It's like, well, you get that feeling of time flies, and that kind of struck me. It's like when you're living the same day over and over again. And
Mm-hmm.
as a dad, it's like I wake up, I would either go to the gym or not, and go to work, and then come home and the kids, it's like you're doing the same thing over and over,
Yeah.
and so it's just
Yeah.
like I can't tell you what happened 2 weeks ago because I can't differentiate it between what happened 2 months ago. So it's like this
Yeah. Yeah.
time flies, and with what you're doing, it's like, well, I don't know if the time still doesn't fly, but it's like now you've given gas to the day where it's like I look forward to it with joy. Whereas like you could look forward to it, it could be like dreadful, right? That's why people look forward to the weekend or
Yep.
look forward to the vacation because it's like I get a break from doing the same thing over and over. But what it sounds like you're able to do because you've been intentional about things is that you're able to do things not only with things you don't like doing with I I don't know what the word is, just gusto, I guess is the best thing I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
But you're able to live your day-to-day life in a way where it's like you win the day. I guess that might be it, right? Like this is might quote unquote be mundane, but I won the day, and as a man, that feels good. Like, oh man, like I have my whiteboard when I crossed off up, like, boo, yeah, I won. I won today. I did the things I said I was going to do, and I did those things.
Yep.
In your way, though, it was not so much a to-do list. It's like a get to do. I get to serve. I get to make things better, and that's a great place to go, right? Because like that's a hell of a to-do list, or know, like get to do. Like I got to do those things. Reeves was around. We like having Reeves around because he serves, and things are better when he's around. Like that's a nice thing to have around. And I experienced that on the when we were on the retreat. Now that you say that, it's like, oh, I noticed the things that you did now. It's like, oh, that makes sense now. That's pretty cool, man.
So I'll tell you what. For me, time still flies, but the difference is I know that I'm using the time the way that I'm supposed to. So for me, that's the big difference. Like, I know that when I look back on each day, even if I don't remember all of them, at the end of the day, I ask myself, did I serve and did I make things better? And if I didn't, I go, oh shoot, I was serving myself instead of serving others in this instance. I need to change that. I need to do something different. So for me, I can look back on these days and know that they weren't lost, even though that I don't remember them. Even though it was mundane, it's not lost, and there's no value taken away from it because I know that I fulfilled my mission on those days. And the days that I didn't, I identified those things because I reflect on my day before I go to bed. So I it's one of the things that I ask myself. Did I make things better, and did I serve people? So, I mean, for me, yeah, no matter what, I think time is going to fly, But are you going to look back and say, I wish it would have been different? Well, if you're living out your mission, then you won't say that.
Yeah.
I can die today knowing that yesterday and the day before, I lived out my mission to serve people and make things better. That's it. I can die today and be happy because I know that's what I'm supposed to do.
Man, that's a lot. The catalyst for all this was the beauty.
It was.
And then so you kind of branched off into other categories or characteristics of the family. And I think one of them that was really cool, I think it was because you have two versions of it. Right, the part 1 and part 2. Am I doing that right?
That's right. So what it is that I originally wrote a thread, and the thread was the 10 marks of a beautiful family culture. All right, and a lot of people like that thread. It got retweeted a few times, and I was like, oh, well, this is popular. Let me think up another values, or let me think of other marks that I believe are part of a family culture. So that original thread, I sat down and I was like, okay, when I was writing it, I was like, man, okay, if I could have a perfect family culture, what things would be in there that are necessary for this? Boom, wrote them out. There they are. Okay, let's write tweets about these guys. Let's put them together and be a thread. And then I was like, man, there's more to this, right? These people are liking this. People are liking this. Are there more marks? Let me just think about it. So I sat down and I wrote another 10 marks, and I was like, oh, yeah, these are the things I believe are marks of a family culture, like a beautiful family culture. Like if you live these out properly, then you'll be creating a beautiful family culture for your household. So I wrote thread 2, so that's another 10 marks, so that's 20 marks. And then people in the comments were like, man, these are really good. This should be turned into a book. And I was like, yeah, they should be turned into a book. and I'm going to write the book. So I was given the advice on writing books to, especially your first couple books, to write short books. Because a lot of people, they don't read long books. Like they buy a 200-page book, and 90% of the people are reading 10 or 15 pages of that thing,
Yeah.
Like they make it through the first chapter, sometimes 2, or they'll flip through the chapters and they don't get very far. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna split these 10 marks into 4 books of 5. Each book is gonna have 5 marks. So it's technically there's 2 more books coming, but
they're coming.
But volume one is the first 5 marks, and volume two are the second 5 marks.
Yeah, so I
Yep.
wanted to speak about volume two because one stood out to me because I think I actually read it in reverse. I think I might have read the second first and then the
Okay.
first. But the
Yeah.
one that stood out to me was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like I I think of like for me everything like is turned into work. Like I think kind of the way I grew up and the things I like doing, I liked doing like stuff that felt like we're building something, and so building something always meant like work. That was kind of what it was for me.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
sports, so it's like, oh, let's go work. Like this is how we're gonna get better. Like I like the grind of work, 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 and then so I could easily like do that to my family. Like, oh, we're gonna work, work. Like that's how. But you had fun, and
Yep. Yep.
like I'm a funny guy, but I'm not a fun guy. Like I don't do fun things. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll make a joke and stuff, but I'm not fun. Like I don't know if you experienced that. I'm not fun. Like
Yeah.
I'll say funny things, and then so like with my kids, like if we went to do something fun yesterday, well today we're not doing anything fun. Like it's like no, we had fun yesterday. We're not doing fun stuff today, and so for me, I have to be very intentional
Your
about
fun
fun.
meter is maxed out.
My fun meter is maxed. Exactly it. Exactly it. So so it stood out to me because I have my whiteboard and it's like for the month I have like do like X number of fun things with the kids. And then so I got to that point where I was like, oh, I did it. My wife was like, oh, so are we done having fun for the month? It's like, no,
Yeah, we are.
yeah.
Yeah, we are.
But I actually thought it was really cool that you incorporated that, right? Because kids, if they're, if they're in
Dude.
an environment and they enjoy it, they're going to want to replicate it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I want my kids to have lots of kids because I have lots of kids. Why would they want to though if it wasn't fun? Like
Mm-hmm.
as an adult you forget like hey like sometimes you just want to have fun. Like I can walk around the house and like bark and stuff and like tell people what to do, but I also need to like let my kids have fun. So like you don't seem like a particularly fun guy either though, Reeves. So like that's why I thought I was kind of funny. So so where did the fun come from?
Oh shoot! Oh dude, I love the comment, man. This is great. Yeah, it's like I think that's the best compliment I've received this week.
Yeah, there you go.
Dude. Okay, so when you read through the chapter, you'll realize that I mentioned on there like that the goal isn't to just like have a game night with your kids. So fun is actually represents the state in which your body is in. So if your body is overly stressed, then you're not having fun. Yeah, I think that I put a tweet out not too long ago that was talking about like one of the greatest things is seeing your kids laugh. Don't ever interrupt or stop a laughing child. And that's because as far as your nervous system goes, like you're in a parasympathetic state when you're laughing and when you're having fun. And when you're in a sympathetic state, your body's like in the fight or flight mode, where you're stressed and you're thinking that you have to defend the bear, right? Are you familiar with these terms? At
Not
least,
parasympathetic. I mean, like I've heard of them, but not to be able to define them. So I understand. I understand a stress state. I get that, and
yeah, yeah,
a relax. So it sounds like the fight or flight. Obviously, that's
yep.
not a healthy. It to be in that state and then for extended period of time is not healthy.
Yeah, correct. And so, really, what if you were to like try to put that chapter into one sentence, it would be to allow your family to be in a parasympathetic state as much as possible,
In a
because
relaxed
that's
state.
in a relaxed state, because that's
Okay.
the time that you guys are laughing and joking, and it's not serious, and your kids aren't worried about being disciplined, right? But the reason that's important and the reason that it connects to beauty is because that's the reality that we live in. Like, we don't live in a world where we should be stressed and in the fight or flight mode all the time.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in that state all the time, then you're not reflecting reality appropriately. And I mean, actually, people go to counseling for this because
Mm-hmm.
they have an upbringing where their parents create this sympathetic state where they're always in fight or flight and they can't get out of it. and it leads to really negative health effects. It leads to obesity. It leads to overeating. It leads to depression. I mean, it is terrible to have somebody in a state like that all the time, and especially because it doesn't represent reality, right? So truth, goodness, reality. If it's not representing reality, then you shouldn't be living in that way. You shouldn't be living in this sympathetic state where you're always concerned and on high alert that you're going to get hurt or you're going to starve or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So part of this actually came from my wife grew up in a sympathetic state. She came from a really abusive household, and she has been fighting that for years. I mean, it's only been the last 2 years that she realized, like, hey, I'm constantly in the fight or flight state. And then what aided that too is my own son, my oldest son. I actually wrote a thread about how we helped him to overcome his debilitating anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
but he, for whatever reason, he was living in this sympathetic state where it happened right around when COVID happened, but he got this fear that was so debilitating that he wouldn't leave the house. He
Mm-hmm.
literally wouldn't go on a walk with us. He would hide in the car. He would hide in his room, and it was just crazy. And that's when our family actually went to therapist, and my wife started getting help for her own needs, and we got my kids help for their needs, and that's when I started learning about the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic state, which led to the chapter on fun. And that's why I considered it when I thought down and said, all right, in my mind's eye, what is one thing that's necessary to have a family that is beautiful? Well, for us, living in a parasympathetic state is it because that represents reality for us. So it isn't. There's a reason it's not parasympathetic state, right? Most people who read that, they're not going to have any idea what they're talking about.
Right.
But if you read fun, you know what fun is. You
Right.
can't have fun in a sympathetic state
Right.
because you're concerned about protecting yourself. But you can have fun and you can laugh and enjoy in a parasympathetic state. So that was kind of like the catalyst. And there's a reason that it's not happy, even though typically you can be happy if you're in a parasympathetic state,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not necessarily happy. So you can be upset about something and still be in a parasympathetic state.
Mm-hmm.
So that chapter is really, it's not as, and I say in the beginning, it's not as much about having a game night with your kids,
Mm-hmm.
right? And turning everything into like a really fun endeavor. It
Yeah.
is enabling your family to live in this parasympathetic state so that they can reflect the reality that they're living in.
What are some ways to, because it sounds like it's really about creating the environment in the house, right? The environment
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, hey, I'm not going to get chewed out because I spilled something, or because kid, whatever thing kids do that
Mm-hmm.
you can get on them about, because you can get on them about everything, right? Like I could go out right now and find 10 different things to start yelling about.
Mm-hmm.
What are
Mm-hmm.
some
Mm-hmm.
what are some ways, because it really is the environment, right? If I'm thinking about
It
it,
is.
right?
It is the
So
environment.
what are some ways that you have found to help create that environment where it's like
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
kids, there's peace in that. I guess that's really it, right? Like peace in the house, like there's
Yeah.
peace here.
Yeah. 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 So I think a big part of it is you have to be slow. You have to be slow to anger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is very difficult, especially for men. You
Mm-hmm.
have to be slow to anger. Like if you're quick to get angry about something, then you're going to be creating this sympathetic state constantly because, right, your kids are going to be walking on eggshells,
Mm-hmm.
right? So being slow to anger is a big one, and forgiveness is a big one.
Mm.
I talk about forgiveness in the
You did.
book,
Yeah.
but when your child knows that they can be forgiven for something that they've done wrong, they more live in a parasympathetic state because they go, it's not the end of the world if I make a mistake or I do something wrong because I
Mm-hmm.
know that I can be forgiven for this thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that means when they drop a glass and it shatters over the floor, they're not like, oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
my dad, he's gonna be so angry. He's
Mm-hmm.
gonna, what's he gonna
Yeah.
do? Last time he hit me, or last time he threw something, or last time he yelled at mom, or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they know, like, hey, I did this thing last week, and was dad upset? Sure, dad was upset. But dad dealt with me in a loving way, and he forgave me. And did I get punished? Yeah, I did get disciplined. I received some discipline for that, but it wasn't that bad. I can comfortably and in a sympathetic state come and talk to my family. So for me, if I just said, like, hey, what are two things someone can do? Be slow to anger and create an environment of forgiveness. That way your kids know, like, hey, if if it's not a big deal, it's not going to be treated like a big deal. It's not going to be treated like
Yeah.
a mountain when it's an anthill. Yeah.
Right. I think one of the cool
Yep.
things that you mentioned too was that something could be done and a child can get disciplined, but it's different to be disciplined and reject, because I think that's what kids feel, right? They feel the rejection, like I am bad because I broke this cup. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, you're being disciplined because you were told not to do those things. So we're correcting that behavior, but we are not rejecting you. You are not a dumb kid. You are not whatever because you can get mad and say really mean things to your kids, which you have to be very
Mm-hmm.
careful of. I'm very aware that to be very careful with my words with my kids, because you can break them.
Yeah. Yep.
But to
Yep.
not
Yep.
not to let them know that they're being disciplined in love, but they're not being rejected, that they're not bad, that
Sure.
they didn't
Sure.
even do a bad thing. It was just, hey, like, you're being disciplined because this you weren't acting appropriately, or you did a thing that we told you to watch out for. You did it anyway. So
Sure. Sure. Sure.
go to your room or
Sure.
do whatever. But you're not being rejected, because I think that's a big thing with the fight or flight, right? It's like, oh, now I have to fight for my own self because I'm being rejected, and now I have to fight for my place in the family because I feel like I'm being I don't know,
Attacked by my
ostracized.
parents. Attacked
Yeah,
by my
yeah,
parents. Yeah.
yeah. I guess
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
pretty fair.
So, I mean, we don't have to go into it as a whole, but being slow to anger plays a really big part in disciplining your children correctly. I mean, it's major. Like, you know, you never discipline your child for an accident. Like, to me, that's a big one. You only
Mm-hmm.
ever discipline your child for disobedience.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it needs to be, even if that accident makes you angry.
Yeah,
You don't
yeah.
discipline your child for an accident.
Mm-hmm.
If they spill a cup on the table, they don't get disciplined for that.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can do that, and you are teaching them incorrectly if you discipline them for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's not a loving thing to do. I mean, there might be consequences for an accident, right?
Right.
But
Mm-hmm.
there won't be discipline. I'm not disciplining you for your accident, but
Yeah.
that there should never be discipline should never be disconnected from love,
Mm-hmm.
ever. It should
Yeah.
never be disconnected from love. If you're disciplining and it's disconnected from love, then you're actually just hurting your child.
Yeah.
That's what you're
Yeah.
doing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You're not. So kind of like cultivating that environment, and part of it goes to like disagreeing with your wife and forgiving your wife when she sins against you, and
Mm-hmm.
for your wife forgiving you when you sin against her. Like, it's not just you and the kids. You model it with your spouse, and it creates that environment
Mm-hmm.
where, okay, forgiveness can allow this to be a sympathetic state.
Yeah.
Yep.
Man, that's some great points, man. I think the first one, the don't discipline for accidents, like that's so true, because like you said, it can be frustrating. It can make you upset, because it was like, hey, like, you were doing something else and now you have to clean up over here. It's like, I don't have time to do this, and you're upset, and it's just like, like, I always had a thing where it was like, I always go back to like football analogies, because that's just kind of what I know. But it was like, I would never yell at a kid for something that I didn't coach them up on. Like, if it was like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, if I didn't
Mm-hmm.
tell you to look out for this thing and you've never seen this before, and you made a mistake, like, I'm not going to yell at you, because there was other coaches who would just yell because they thought. But it was like, no, I never talked to you about this. I'm not going to yell at you about this. If it was something that we had discussed and I had coached you on specifically and you got it wrong, now I'm going to yell at you.
Yep.
In that context. And so from a family context, it's like, hey, my kid is just being a kid, and knocks a cup over. because somebody else left it there and they didn't see it or whatever. Like,
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
like that happens. I have young kids, and so sometimes they just fumble stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
that just happens.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
if they blatantly, if I told them multiple times to do something and they're not doing it, well, now I'm upset because you're disobeying me now. So
Mm-hmm.
now we're gonna approach this in a different manner. So I think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
good to have that clear delineation. And I'm glad that you brought that up. And then the context of with you and your wife, because I think that gets that's where everything happens, right? Like this is where it started, and so for them
Yep.
to see that behavior modeled, um, it all trickles down from there, right? Like you, the man, and then your wife.
Mm-hmm.
You guys set the context of how do we agree, how do we disagree,
That's right.
how do we handle conflict. Um,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure, like me and you've been married plenty of times. It's like you've had plenty of chances for conflict and getting it right and getting it
Mm-hmm.
wrong. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this sucks, and the kids feel it too. My kids can tell when we're arguing, man. They know.
That's right. That's right. Well, and if the wife or the mom is being mistreated, like it will overflow into the kids because in the way she speaks, she will say, "Don't let your dad hear about this. He'll get angry." Right? That's
Mm-hmm.
not a beautiful environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, don't tell your dad that this happened because he's gonna go off the handle. I'll take care of it, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
all of that is not a beautiful family culture, and that's not create. I mean that literally is putting the kids on eggshells.
Mm-hmm.
But when your wife said, "Hey," when your wife says to your kids, "Hey, I did this. I shouldn't have done it. Your dad forgave me. It's all good." Right
Mm-hmm.
now, you're literally creating an echo chamber of forgiveness in the household, and I mean that just sets the stage for the parasympathetic state. Yeah.
All right. Let me know if you've run across a scenario. Kid comes and asks you for something.
Mm-hmm.
You give the answer, and
Mm-hmm.
then kid goes to mom and asks the question again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
how
Mm-hmm.
how important is it for mom and dad to be on the same page? Because I'm pretty sure, like I've never actually been asked any parents this, but I get that in my house.
Mm-hmm.
Kids just know, like when I'm working, like the kids have kind of found out like to ask dad questions when he's working, because it's just like, yeah, well, whatever, like because I'm trying to like
Just
I'm
go.
busy. Yeah, like my wife will leave the house like for like 2 seconds, and all of a sudden, like I get kids coming in asking me for things like, "Wait a minute, your mom was just here. She'll be back in 5 minutes. Why? You found the perfect window to ask me a question to
Mm-hmm.
try and get it
Mm-hmm.
because you know that I'm busy." In I don't know, in the family culture context, like how does the Reeves family
Mm-hmm.
handle
Yeah.
that?
Oh man, dude, kids are gamers, man.
Mm-hmm.
They will game anybody. And they'll game their grandparents, they'll game their parents, they'll game the babysitter. It doesn't matter, man. They
Mm-hmm.
will they will game them. I'm blessed to have a wife who's on the same page with me. I mean, like on 99.5% of every issue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but my kids know that they will more likely get a yes from mom than they will from me. Like they already know, like just in general. So if they come and ask me something, my first question is, "What did your mom say?"
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
that's it. What did your mom say? If they say, "Oh, I didn't ask mom," depending on the scenario, I'll just give them an answer. But if they go and ask their mom after I give them an answer, then we talk about it. Then we
Mm-hmm.
have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
I don't ever discipline my kids for doing that because yeah, they shouldn't be doing it, but usually they know that they shouldn't be doing it, and I can have a verbal conversation and say, "Hey, listen, what did you do that you shouldn't have done?"
Right.
"Well, I asked you and I asked mom." "Right. Why shouldn't you do that?" Right? So this is the conversation I have with my son. "Why shouldn't you do that?" I mean, it seems like a good idea, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if one person says no, ask the next person.
Yeah.
So then I go through this conversation with my child and walk him through, why don't we want you to do that? And then it works out. So
Yeah.
it's pretty much kind of at the point where my kids know what to expect when they ask one of us for something.
Right.
So yeah.
It's pretty much the same in our, like my wife and I are on the same page for and when we're not on the same page, we'll be on the same page and then talk about it after. When
Yeah.
it's like, okay, let's kind of like, hey, you handled this in a way I didn't agree with, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's talk about it
Mm-hmm.
now. We're
Mm-hmm.
not, it's the united front.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you
We're the kids.
and honestly, we don't always put forth a united front, because if I do disagree with a decision my wife has made, I'll tell my kids this. I'll say, hey, why are you doing that? They'll say, oh, mom said I could do it. And I'll say, she said you could do that, huh? All right, I'm going to go talk to her about this. And then I will go talk to my wife, and I'll say, hey, what's going on? How come the kids are doing this? They'll explain what happened. She'll explain it, and either it'll change my mind, or I'll say, hey, I don't think they should be doing this because of this.
Mm-hmm.
And if we both change our mind, then we will come out together and tell the kids, hey, your mom and I have talked it over. We don't want you to be doing this, so you need to stop.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I do think it's important, like in most cases, because like if you're at church or you're at the grocery store, like you don't have time to do that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're at
Right.
home or you're at the park or something like that, you can have that kind of conversation.
Yeah.
So I would say, like in my household, probably 90% of the time, it's a united front, especially
Mm-hmm.
when you're outside the house, because you just don't have time to go through that whole process, and you can talk about it later behind closed doors, right?
Right.
But I do think it's important to show the kids, like, hey, mom and dad don't always agree, but they can agree, right? So on this instance, they didn't agree. They talked about it. They changed their mind, and now they agree.
Changed their mind.
Now,
Yeah,
now we're going.
yeah, and they can change their mind too, right? That's a
Yep.
good one, because there could be the, I don't know, the want to is like, okay, what I said goes, and I said what I said, so I'm gonna
Yes.
stick to it, even
Yep.
when it's like, well, you're kind of wrong.
Yeah.
I've done that. I've done that where it's like, hey, I stuck to my guns when I shouldn't have, and I've also, changed my mind, and because I want my kids to see like, hey, oh, I didn't get the full picture of what was said
Mm-hmm.
or what happened. I say I'm sorry to my kids.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh, I'm sorry. Like I didn't realize that
Dude.
this. I think
Mhm.
that's a big thing.
It's so easy, especially when you have multiple. I mean, I have 3 kids, and so it's so easy to jump the gun when they come to you with something, because they've been coming to you with stuff for years.
Years, yeah.
So it's easy to jump the gun, and I do the same thing, man. I mean, these parents that paint like an Instagram photo of themselves for their kids, like I'm a perfect parent and I can never make a mistake and I wouldn't apologize to my kids, are hurting them badly.
I didn't know that people are doing that.
Dude, if you are representing yourself as like I'm a dad and I'm never wrong, which many dads do. Many dads will never apologize to their kids because they can't be wrong or their child can't correct them. Like no, one of the marks of a beautiful family culture is having humility, and having humility says that you can learn from anybody, and I can, including my kid.
Yeah.
I can learn something from my child. I can be wrong, and I can apologize to my child for making a mistake, or even speaking to him in a disrespectful manner. Because I don't always speak to my child in a disrespectful manner. I might speak to him in a disrespectful way, and then come back and say, "Hey, you know what? You were wrong, but I spoke to you improperly. I shouldn't have spoken to you in that way. Please forgive me for doing that."
Yeah. One of the things I do, I always say please and thank you to my kids. Like if even when it's like, hey, please go clean your room, or please do, like I say please to my kids, and I think, I don't know if it's a humility thing but just like, oh, my kid's a person. Like I'm not I think long term, like I want my kids to want to come back when they have their kids and be like, oh, daddy was good to me. I want my grandkids to want to come. So it's like, please and thank you is big in our house. Like, always saying please and thank you. And I think that might be kind of the same thing. I don't know if it's a humility thing or a respect thing, but I don't know. Maybe once I kind of whittle it down, I kind of figure out where that fits in which category. Because I really like how you break that down and how things just kind of like, oh, like this is the way to act. It's for me to be humble. So when I speak to, like, just because I'm dad doesn't mean I get to speak to you disrespectfully. Like,
yeah, or speak down to you. Yeah.
Right. I
Dude,
am daddy. I am daddy. I am the authority figure, but I do not lack humility, which I think is huge.
so I'll say a couple things. I love that you say please and thank you to your kids, dude. That's awesome. And you know what? I say please and thank you to my wife, right? Like
Hmm.
if I ask my wife to do something, I'm not like her boss or
Hmm.
manager or some type of like drill sergeant.
Hmm.
I may be the leader of the home, but I can still be respectful when I speak to my wife and say, "Hey, would you please make me a cup of coffee?"
Hmm.
I'm not here to say, "Hey, woman, make me a cup of coffee," right? So
Yeah.
so when you have that conversation with your wife, then it kind of like overflows into the conversation and the language that you use when you speak to your kids.
That's
And
true. Yeah.
and when so I actually got really convicted because I was speaking disrespectfully to my kids, and my wife had pointed it out to me, and she did it like in a sneaky way because she told me, she said, when I was in pest control, she said, "Hey, would you ever speak to one of your pest control customers the way that you speak to your kids?" And I was like,
Oh.
crickets,
Yeah.
crickets. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, dang. And she was like, well, just think about it. Why wouldn't you speak to one of them that way?
Hmm.
And I was like, well, because that wouldn't be good customer service. And she's like, oh, so you give your customers better customer service than you give
Hmm.
your kids.
Hmm.
And I was like,
Yeah.
dang, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I was like, I was really like really convicted by that. And I was like, you know what? That's messed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's messed up. I should not be doing that. I mean,
Yeah.
if I'm here to serve them, they should be getting better customer service than
They
my
should.
my pest customer service.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
In
And
the
just to
in the
be,
hierarchy of things, my family should get the best of me
yep.
before my customers do.
Yep.
But it's
Yep.
a hard thing as a man though, right? Because you spend 8 hours over there and you feel like you're giving you give and give, and then you come home and it's like, okay, and I give and, but understanding what the priorities and there's you still have more to give, right? It's not a problem. It's just that you're I don't know if you want to say you're lazy or you're just kind of like you're around each other a lot, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and there's the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
familiarity. There's a hey, three kids running around. The variable of like who's upset or who's not doing what they're doing. So like you could literally, one kid can be like the perfect angel, and then one can be raising hell, and like you can yell at this one, and then it's like, now I gotta switch gears and kid gloves this one because this one's not doing anything wrong, but
Yeah.
you could easily be upset still with the one that's being perfectly like no issues because you just got done yelling at one kid. And I've been
Yep.
very aware of that. It's like I've chewed one kid out and then be like, okay, soften up, like this kid is good, like we're good, I don't want to have any of the residual
Overflow. Yeah.
overflow. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That comes a lot to self control. You have to be able to flip that switch or that frame of reference. And I've noticed in my own self that like there's times where your blood will boil because you're like, I've told my kids this 10,000 times, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like, and you have to just slow your own roll. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'll just have to like put the conversation off. That way it doesn't cause any problems. And just talk about it to them, unless it's like an emergency. But like I would be just so upset about it or so angry about it that I'll just wait because I know that what comes out of me is not going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
So we just got to slow that down. And then what you're saying about switching from one kid to another, sometimes I've noticed in myself that I can't do that. So what I'll have to do is just address one thing with a kid, and then just not address, like I'll go take some time to myself because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not in the place where I can just switch it to be like, all right, oh yeah,
Yeah.
let's color, let's do your
Yeah,
homework.
yeah,
Like
exactly. Yeah.
it's like, okay, I need some time to decompress from
Uh-huh.
this conversation with them, and whether it's right or wrong that I'm that upset about something is another topic. But
Right.
the fact that I don't want that to overflow. I
Yeah.
hit the kill switch and take a break, even if it's 5 minutes, and just like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
okay, whatever is going on can just wait for 5 minutes, and it'll be fine.
I think one of the cool things about this conversation is, like, I think about the way you treat your kids really is the overflow of your relationship with your wife. Like
Absolutely.
I speak really sweetly to my kids. For the most part, you know, when not, and it's like, yeah, I'm talking to you. It's like, oh yeah, like that's where like, because like the please and thank you stuff. It's like I didn't realize that's where it came from. I always said please and thank you to my wife because I was always very grateful, and I was never. I'm not a. I can be authoritarian, but I never wanted to be that way with my wife. It was just like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, you're my partner. Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
like using the
Mm-hmm.
word, but like, you know, we were like, you know, we're on the same team. So I'm not gonna
Yeah,
I'm not gonna belittle my the teammate that I rely on the most. Like, I need you, and so
that's right.
there was the overflow from that. Um, like, yeah, it's just, I don't know, man. It's been a lot of fun. Just kind of like a lot of what's cool about this is like I have my own thoughts, and then when talking to somebody, like you're like, oh yeah, I do think this thing, or like, oh, I like you kind of like, you know, the iron sharpens iron kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
where it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
like that's true, like that's where that comes from. Like I didn't realize
Yeah.
that that's where it comes from, but
Yep.
that's why I'm just such a big proponent of marriage, right? Like, you know, you if you're, you know, sowing your wild oats and you have a kid with somebody who you're not really attached to, it's like, well, the foundation isn't there for
Mm-hmm.
a family. I mean, you can fix it, you can fix it, but it's just gonna, you've made it that much more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, man. Hearing the way you speak to your wife and your family, it's really refreshing. It's just a lot of fun too. It's just
Mm-hmm.
fun, man.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Dude, it's. I think that, you know, part of the hate on the toxic masculinity from the toxic masculinity side is from men abusing their leadership as fathers, you know, and abusing their leadership as husbands to their wives, you know,
Hmm.
because it's not that that we shouldn't be leaders to our wives and our kids. It's that we should be
Yeah,
good
yeah.
leaders to our wives and kids.
Hmm.
And you know, that teamwork picture. I think that teamwork picture is essential. You know, like if you look at your family like a team, or even if you look at it like a business, anything that has to function as a unit, right? You
Hmm.
could, like, you know, we could probably be like a maybe we're a special operations Reeves, you know, family unit, and all the pieces have to work together. And
Hmm.
so when the husband knows what he's doing and he can complement the wife and what she's doing, and the kids know what their roles are and what they're doing, I mean, that is what enables the family to function as such. And you know, if I was a leader or a manager over somebody, there's no way I would be yelling at them.
Yeah.
And nor would I yell at my wife. I should treat my wife way better than I treat any employee that I would have underneath of me. That's poor leadership, and that's not going to create a good business culture for that person to be in. Same thing with your own family culture. You know, if you're creating a beautiful family culture, then your wife is going to thrive as a wife, and she's going to thrive as a mother. You're going to thrive as a husband and as a father. Your kids are going to thrive as kids, you know, as they should be. So yeah, dude. I mean, that's awesome. And unfortunately, it's it's rare, dude. It's rare. There's plenty of men that are verbally abusive to their wife. It may never lead to like physical violence,
Hmm.
but yeah, it can definitely take an emotional toll on the entire family.
Yeah, man. I think this is a good stopping point because I think you kind of summed up basically what we've been talking about right there in that last sentence without me even having to ask, "Hey,
Hmm.
what's your last statement there before we wrap up?" But
Yeah.
I think it's incredible. Before we do go, do you have anything on the horizon? This will come out probably so I have one coming out on Friday, so this will be next Friday. I don't even know what the date is. Do you have anything on the horizon? Book three coming up, that we
So
should be on the lookout for? Go ahead.
I'm gonna finish book 3 and 4, and then what I really want to do is use those as a springboard to coach men and coach fathers.
Mm-hmm.
So on the horizon is individual coaching for fathers, so that they can create a beautiful family culture in their own household.
And I'll say this, man. Going to the retreat with Tyler. Like I learned so much from you. That was one of the reasons why, like, I had bought the book because it was like, oh, that's Reeves, that's the homie, right?
Hmm.
Like I'll do that.
Yep.
But then like meeting you and then talking to you and you sharing the stuff, I was like, oh, like so when the time comes for you to like, I'll be so happy to help promote that, man, because this conversation, I think alone, I think is like hopefully gonna be like a big infomercial because this has been outstanding, man.
Hmm.
I think this is really good for a lot of fathers, people who are, working the 9 to 5s, and not, but because that comes to it, but that I think this is going to resonate with a lot of people, man. So I really appreciate you coming on today, man. This has been really fun. I've really thoroughly enjoyed this.
Yeah, man. Dude, I'm just thankful to be here. It's I didn't discover these things on my own. I feel like God has literally, like, pounded this stuff into my head, even if I didn't want to learn it. And I'm thankful, dude. So I'm happy to share any knowledge I have, and I appreciate you having me on.
For sure, man. He is Reeves Writer. You can find him on Twitter at Reeves Writer. On YouTube, he's Poetic Sheepdog. He is a modern dad. He's gonna help you coach up your family. Reeves, thanks so much for coming on today, brother.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, take care.